All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a few more people coming in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. The title of this webinar is Shortcuts and Secrets, Mastering Invoice and Settlement Generation. I am your host, William Binkley. I'm a TruckLogics support specialist, and I've been on TruckLogics for quite some time. And this is one of the topics I enjoy talking about and showing people different ways to kind of use TruckLogics for creating your invoices and making just settlements easier and different things that you don't normally think about. So the overview for today is we're going to talk about payments and where they appear, expenses on settlements and invoices, grouping invoices, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A session. All right, I'm going to pause the screen and switch over to our main account and show you some demonstrations about what we're going to talk about. All right, as you can see here, I have created 3 different loads, and I use the cloning feature to just create the same load multiple times, just to make this a little easier. But we're going to go ahead and click on this one. And part of the invoice that you see here whenever you're creating the load, you'll also see this in the load creation screen, is the fuel surcharge fee, the accessory fee, and the accessorial deduction. Now, these are things that you can add while you're creating the load or adding it onto the invoice itself. You can enter that in here, but anything like the fuel surcharge fee and accessorial fees, accessory fees, those will be added income for you, whereas the accessorial deduction would be considered an expense for you. All right. And you can choose anything. You'll have to select the category first. So we'll just choose detention. We'll just put $25, just making up numbers. And you'll see that that has changed the total right here to $75 instead of $100, which was the total hauling fee. And then, of course, give it a number. And that'll generate the invoice. We can finalize it and receive payment. And then make sure you put the date. We're going to put it as today's date. We received payment on today, September 21st. We got it through electronic funds transfers. You can put anything in these. It's not required, but if you have any kind of processing fees or a reference number of any kind, you can enter that there. But we're just receiving payment on this one invoice. We're going to go ahead and save. And now, because we've received payment, typically anything that's like an accessorial deduction, like detention, you'll see that in an expense transaction. Same with factoring charges. If you've added a factoring company onto the invoice, then typically you'll see that in the expense transactions as well. So as you can see here, we've got an accessorial deduction. The payment mode was EFT, and that was that $25 that we entered on that invoice. A lot of people will sometimes call in and say that they'll ask, you know, like I had to deduct some kind of expense on this, or I had to give this person a discount because there was something on our end. How do I show how to do that? If I just put it on the invoice, does that automatically appear? And the answer is yes. As we just saw, we made the payment. As soon as we marked it as paid, it's already right here in the expense transaction section. And same thing with the settlements. So for example, if we go to dispatches right here, and go to all dispatches, And we'll go to WB invoice 1. We're going to go ahead and create the settlement for this driver. We'll just say manual pay 100. And then if you have anything like accessorial fees that are getting reimbursed to the driver or any reimbursements, you'll add them in this section. But any kind of expenses, say this driver had a fuel expense, we're going to say it was wrong numbers, but 100 gallons for $50. I'm sure everybody wishes that was the price. Put the driver, deduct from pay, and then select the state. We're located in South Carolina, so I'm just going to choose South Carolina. Oh, don't forget the payment mode. And save. Now, we've got the fuel expense right there. And when we come back over to the settlement, we've got it showing as $50 right there. Now, if we just generate this, manual pay, $100, this driver is getting $50 of that. When we click save and finalize, if you go back to expenses, you'll see that the options that you had underneath the action column are no longer there. You can only view. This is because it's already now tied to a driver and a settlement that has been finalized. So the intent is to take this expense and it's being deducted from the pay. So it's now attached somewhere else. If you were having any issues, or if there's an expense that you're trying to delete because it didn't actually happen, but you're deducting expenses from your driver pay, this could be something that that could be preventing you from deleting the expense. So if we just go ahead and void this, you'll see that we now have the edit button and the delete button associated with the fuel expense. Now we'll just do manual pay again. Save and finalize, mark for payment. This is the only dispatch that is showing for this driver. Payment option. And then we're going to put tomorrow's date just to kind of differentiate it a little bit. Now, we just made a payment to a driver. And that also is going to show up in the expense transactions. Usually based on the date that you had assigned it for. So we'll say from the 17th to the 23rd search. And you see here, payments, driver settlement, EFT. The payment amount was $50 because it was $100, but we deducted $50 out of that. All right. So you'll notice that like whenever you make a payment or anything, it is automatically recorded in the system, and anything associated with like the invoices, any accessorial deductions or accessorial fees that are paid to you or your driver will also appear in these sections. All right. We saw that $25. We're showing that again in the expense transactions. And these automatically appear after you've marked them as paid. All right. So we've gone over the settlements, we've gone over where the payments show up, different things with the, some of the stuff to understanding the invoices and settlements is that the chart of accounts right here. Your invoices are part of this, and they are typically already preset. So for example, when you have an invoice, anything that's considered a hauling fee is going to be considered mileage income. If you scroll down, we've also got the expense accounts. We've got the income accounts up top and the expense accounts at the bottom. We'll just go ahead and change the filter to 100. And that was under payments. That settlement that we just did for that driver was under payments. This is for money paid to contract laborers for products or services. A lot of fleets, they are hiring other owner operators who have their own businesses who aren't necessarily a part of that company. So if I'm an owner, if I'm a fleet and I hire somebody, truck driver A, who's part of A's trucking company incorporated, he is just contracting out his work for us. So I would pay him, I would have him in the address book as a contractor. And whenever I give him a settlement, that would be in this section, the payments. Once our market is paid, it'll be recorded as a payment for contract labor. We'll see view transactions here. We have that $50 right there, made on the 22nd. If you added your driver as a employee in your address book, that'll be a little bit different. That'll be categorized under wages. So money paid to someone for their services during a specific time. This is typically for driver settlements for anybody who is doing like a who's part of like a W-2 employee. They work for you, they're representative of your company. They probably don't own their own company, but they're just a driver underneath your company that you've hired and they work for you. All right. And now with this, sometimes I know that in the trucking industry, you're sending out multiple invoices back and forth, you're communicating with a bunch of people, and you know, we're talking with factoring companies like we talked about in the last webinar. And part of that is sometimes people want everything grouped together. And sometimes people just prefer having everything grouped together because it just makes everything easier, right? So going back to these two loads here, you'll notice that, oh, 1 second, just click the wrong button. WB invoice 3 is still with a new ribbon, and WB invoice 2 is also with a new ribbon. Nothing has been generated for those accounts yet, for those invoices. And when we go over here, we're going to click Add Invoice. Hover over Accounts, click on Invoices, and since it's for the same company, we're going to click Add Invoice. Now, the Add Invoice feature can be used for different things. Some people will use this to add some extra charges onto any other services that they might have had to render. And sometimes people just use this to group the invoices or do both. With this screen, you'll see that any load that is for a specific customer that does not have an invoice generated for it will automatically appear here. And you can also choose to exclude them by clicking this include load / dispatches charges. Pretty much what will happen is if you are combining invoices, this is just going to take all of the loads and dispatches that you have selected here, and it will combine them and any of the fees associated with them. So you'll see line haul, fuel surcharge, accessorial, deductions, discounts, advances, anything like that will appear, anything that you've entered in those categories while creating the load will appear in this section. And we're also just going to throw in, you know, non-load invoice. So an item, it can be an item or another service that you charge for. We're just going to say paperwork fee. Rate $50. And if there's a tax, you can add a tax and have that automatically have some kind of like name for it, add a tax rate, and that'll also be calculated into the system. We'll just say SC tax. .5% and save. And as you see here, it automatically does the math for you as well. So we've got the invoice total, which is $50 for this one. And the combined invoices up here total up to be 200. We've got the SC tax, which is 2.5% of 50. And we see that all added at the grand total at the bottom. All right, this is not going to be for a factoring company, but we still can put one. So we'll just do webinar factoring, and we will make it for a factoring company. So that'll be 3%. And then we have to give it a number. All right, so we just generated that. We're just going to go ahead and finalize it. But as you can see here, we've got the load and dispatch charges. So anything that was extra has been put here. Non-load invoice details, anything that's not associated with a load that has already been generated in the system will appear in this area where you've typed it out, and any tax for that. All right. And then we're just going to go ahead and receive payment on this. We'll set it for next week. And now if we go back to the expense transactions, update our time frame. We'll see that we've got the factoring charges right here, which we're part of WB invoice for. It even tells you the invoice that it's for. And you can see that the payment mode. So that way, in the event that you can't find something, or you find it in here, but you can't find the invoice, it's got the description right there for you. On top of that, if we come over here to income expenses, or income transactions, we'll search from this date to this date, and you'll see everything broken down, and it also has the invoice numbers right here. So you've got factoring expense paid on all of that. You've got the 200 from the actual combined invoice of both of those loads. You've got the $50 from the non-load invoice, and you've got the tax that was collected as well. All right. And now with dispatches, let's go over here. So we've generated the settlements for one of the dispatches. Now we're going to do another one. We'll say $100. And whenever people start out on TruckLogics, a lot of times they're like, do I have to do this for every dispatch? You don't necessarily have to. You can. We're going to go ahead and click Save and Finalize. Now, if you are paying somebody over a certain period of time, it'll just be easier to just go ahead and go into the dispatch, click a settlement, put the information in, generate, and then finalize it. Settlement, not pay per hour, manual pay, 100, save and finalize. And then when you come over to the settlements tab, everything is combined. So it has to be finalized in order for it to appear here. And if you need to make any changes, or if you need to update any information, you also see the dispatch number that the settlement is associated with. So we can always just go back and WP invoice to and say we're just going to void this and change this to 125. All right. Make sure you save it, because if you click away and then click back, you'll have to enter everything again. All right. And so we're going to go ahead and mark these for payment. Next week. And you'll notice that the settlements will be separated out by amounts. And you won't see like the full settlement amount. You'll see them broken down by it was paid to the driver, webinar last name. We've got 100 for one dispatch and 125 for another dispatch. So combining those will just make it a lot easier for you to mark what's going to be paid out for the week. With the driver payments, we're going to go ahead and void this so we can show you something else. Void. All right, so only anything that has been finalized will appear here. All right, kind of similar with grouping the invoices. Whenever you have an invoice that is going to be grouped with a bunch of loads with invoices that are going to be grouped, they need to be in the new state. So just keep in mind, invoice has to be new to be grouped. Dispatches have to be finalized. Settlements have to be finalized to be grouped. All right. And on top of that, since we just voided some of the settlements, if you go back, they are also automatically taken out. So you'll notice that we still have the factoring charge from the invoice, but since we voided it, that automatically gets taken out and is already accounted for by the time you hit void. All right. So a lot of these questions come in, and whenever you're grouping settlements together as well, sometimes people are just doing a bunch of dispatches and working a lot throughout the week or throughout the pay period. You can actually even search what a specific time frame for the settlements. So that way you only show from this time frame to this time frame of what needs to be paid out. So let's take this one, we're gonna avoid it. And as you see here, it's scheduled for July 21st. Now, if we select a period, we're gonna go by the pickup date, and we're only looking for stuff from this month in this time frame, and click search. You'll notice that disappears. So this is just another helpful feature for you to just kind of minimize the time spent having to search for everything. And this allows you to just kind of clean everything up, make it easier, combine what you need to combine, and just make sure everything is paid out properly. All right. At this time, we're going to go back over to our presentation screen for our Q&A session. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, please type in the question box in your little screen that appears, and you'll be able to, I'll see your questions, anything that gets asked, and if you need me to re-explain anything, or if there's anything that's unclear, if you have questions about anything else, type them in there. Just keep it related to the topic of this webinar. And any other questions, any questions that are not about this webinar, make sure you direct that to our support team. You can call us, email us, or send us a chat. All right. At this time, while we are waiting on some questions, oh, we just got a question. All right, can an invoice that has been grouped be voided or edited? Yes. You can always void the invoices. It's a little bit different for grouped invoices. Let me switch back over to the account so you can see what I mean. All right, we're back on the invoices section. We're going to go to paid invoices. We've got WB4. So right here, you can see we don't have a void button anywhere. There's no way to void it. There's not any way to kind of edit that. You can print it, you can export it to QuickBooks, or you can email it. But with the grouped invoices, this is just a little known trick. You've also got these little arrows right here. And what these show is they show the payments on these invoices. So for example, if you have like an invoice that your customer paid you half of it on Monday and you're getting the other half on Tuesday, you'll see that and all the payments listed right there. If you've voided a payment on an invoice, that will appear right here as well. So we've got the receipt number, and we're just going to click void. All right, now that switches this back to an open invoice that has just been finalized. And say we just made this invoice as a mistake, we didn't mean to make it. And we'll just go over here. Now we have the void button up here, and you can click void, and this will eliminate that invoice. You'll see here, WB invoice 4 has been voided. Very good question. All right, still waiting on a few more, but just seeing that that one was the first one asked. And just a reminder, this month is all about invoicing and settlements, creating them, generating them, different tips and tricks on how to use TruckLogics to utilize them to their full potential. And so any questions about anything within the webinar, definitely don't hesitate to ask. All right, same person asked, does it work the same way with settlements? Not really. Settlements are a little more straightforward. Yes and no. Whenever you come over here to the driver settlements and you click driver settlements, accounts, click driver settlements, you'll go over here to driver payments. And I didn't really talk about it as I was doing it, but if you come over here to view payments, you'll see the history of everything that was paid out and when. Now, say that this payment was supposed to say it was made on 9/21 instead of 9/22 for one dispatch. We'll come over here to the options and we can click void right here to get rid of that. And that'll free up that settlement so you can go back and make any edits or put it under the correct date. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that or you want to make sure, you can click the view button and see the full details as well. And this actually does have the void button in the top right corner. Remember with the grouped invoices, we didn't have it, but with the settlements, even if you have group settlements or multiple settlements under one of the payments, you can click that void button to unmark them as paid, and they'll be reverted back to a final settlement status. All right. Very good questions. Anything else so far? All right, I'm not seeing anything else, so I'm going to go ahead and switch back to our presentation. If you have any questions or if there was anything that was not answered during the presentation, feel free to reach back out to our support team. Again, you can call us, email us, or chat with us. We are available Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, coming up in the next webinar is going to be all about navigating TruckLogics, locating invoices and driver settlements. So some of the things that Mark is going to talk about were demonstrated in this webinar, but he's going to go a little more in depth with where you can find invoices and driver settlements. And that'll be next week, September 28th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, like all of our other webinars. And as you'll see here, this is the third webinar in the series, Shortcuts and Secrets. That is today, September 21st. And the next one is going to be, again, September 28th. If you have not already signed up for a free trial, go ahead and get started today. You can go to TruckLogics.com. There's a little orange sign up button in the top right corner. Just put in your information, no credit card required, 15-day free trial. You'll be able to test out pretty much everything, all of our integrations, invoicing, all that fun stuff. And you'll be able to really learn how to implement TruckLogics into your business and make it work best for you. If you are on a free trial, go ahead and get subscribed. I mean, we're making all this content to help everybody get more acquainted with TruckLogics and make it easier for you to run your business and also just see different things that are not always so obvious, kind of like the grouped invoices and voiding them. Also, if you sign up today, when you get subscribed, if you're signing up for a monthly account, you can get 10% off your first month if you use code William10. So go ahead and type that in when you're getting subscribed, okay? Continuing forward, if you have any other questions, anything related to your account, anything related to what we talked about today that you didn't ask, go ahead and get in touch with us. We're located in Rock Hill, South Carolina. You can email us at support@trucklogics.com. Our phone number is 704-234-6946. Again, we are here Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We also post this content and other updates on our social medias. So down below, you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And just a reminder, these webinars are recorded. So if you did not show up today, you're going to get emailed with the webinar and any other webinars that you sign up for. So we make sure that you still get the information. Even if you can't attend, go ahead and sign up. For everybody that came today, thank you so much for joining us. And for anybody watching later on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.